Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for our next session of our Get Certified DP-600 series. My name is Anna. I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters and moderators to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Thank you so much for joining.
G'day, how you doing? Welcome to Semantic Models and Power BI. I'm Martin and I'm with my fellow presenter, Amando. I'm in Brisbane, Australia. Amando's in California. So a little bit about me before we start. I am Martin Catherall. I think I've got to say, yeah. Oh, sorry, we've jumped. Oh, there you go. I'm Martin Catherall. I'm Microsoft MVP. Started life in SQL Server and developed through Azure and into Fabric and working with great people like Amando. So, Amando, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Hey, thank you, Martin. Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining us in our DP-600 session as well. My name is Armando Lacerda. I live here in California in the United States, close to the Napa Valley, which is a great neighborhood. I'm also a Microsoft MVP like Martin on the data platform. So I work with Fabric day in and day out and other Microsoft data products like SQL Server, Purview, and a few others. And I've been a Microsoft certified trainer. I've been delivering Microsoft official curriculum to Microsoft customers for the past 30 years. So yes, I am that old. I am originally from Brazil, and I see here in the comments going by some people from Brazil connected. So hola, Robson, and everybody else connected.
Great stuff, Amanda. Great stuff. And we've got our moderators with us. We've got Kevin Arnold and we've got Philippa Burgess. So they'll be answering questions in the chat. Drop a message in the chat. Tell us where you're from. We'd love to hear. But what have we got? Else have we got, Amanda?
Yeah, thank you for the moderators there. So this is the third session on the Get Certified. We do have some more sessions coming up next week. On the 24th, we have the Fabric Data Days, which is a monthly installment of connection with Fabric, Fabric-related people with great topics. Next week is going to be with Mike Carlo. You do not want to miss that one if you want to learn about Fabric and things around Fabric. In this particular case, it's going to be about coding languages. Mark is a great speaker, and don't miss it. I will not.
Yeah, but what have we got next? We got some great events coming up, Amanda. We got Fabric Data Days, which is a monthly event. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, the data days, it's the one that Marco is going to present next week, and they come every month. They had a break in January, but they brought this one back. And alongside with the Fabric Data Days, we also have amazing training materials where you can go there. And I'm sorry, previous slide, where you can go there, connect, and collect the training materials. This one here is about the Fabric user panel, which is a great way to get connected and see what Microsoft is preparing for Fabric and Power BI. So if you want to try some the new things Microsoft is cooking, you want to give them their feedback, give them your feedback. That's a good way of doing this. And here is the one, right? The Fabric analytics in a day. This one is the workshops that Microsoft offer through Microsoft partners. So if you want to get some hands-on and some people to help you walking through the exercises, this is a great way to do it. They have many options, many days where they offer these workshops, and it's for free. So it's a great way to get started with Fabric. And if you're new to the environment, I highly recommend you signing up for this. Have you tried this one, Marty? Have you seen it?
Yeah, it is. It is a great workshop. There's also a real-time analytics one, But have we got some codes, Armando, for the exams that we're about to talk about? We have indeed.
Look at that. Microsoft is helping everybody, helping us, not just to get certified, not just by giving this content we're going to cover today, which is the third one in the series about semantic model, but they are also giving us the vouchers to take the exam for free. That's a big savings, right? Here in the US is $165, so it's a good dinner with my lady.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong there. And there's a Fabric conference coming up, Armando. That's and I think we'll both be there. This one is not in LA this year. Sorry, not LA, Las Vegas. It's not in Las Vegas. It's in Atlanta. So I'm looking forward. It'll be my first time in Atlanta. I'll be presenting with my fellow MVP, Heidi Hastings. And
Nice.
I think you'll be presenting too, Armando.
Yeah, I have a session. I have a breakout session on data integration. And my session is about helping the SQL Server people, my folks that work with data integration in SSIS. We're going to bridge that knowledge into Fabric and see how things are done in Fabric, how we implement the same idea, and how we implement the same logics and the same ideas in different way in Fabric. So I'm looking forward for that week in Atlanta.
Great stuff.
There's a discount code there. I don't know if you notice it, but there is a discount code there. We're still a month away, so we still have time to book your trip if you want to come and develop networking, which the conference is mostly all about, right? To get to know new people and get connected with Microsoft engineers on the product. And if you are getting inspired to come, there is a discount code there, $200 discount code. Again, is a good dinner, especially in Atlanta. If it was in Vegas, would be a good dinner. In Atlanta is a better dinner.
Great stuff, Armando. Great stuff. Okay, let us know what we've got coming up, Armando. And before we do that, I'd like to say to the audience, drop a note in the chat. Let us know if you're planning to take DP-600 or even 700. We'd love to hear from you. Take it away, Armando. Let's get into our content.
Yeah, so this is our menu. Since we're talking about dinners, this is our content for the day. We're gonna so this session is to help you folks connect there on our live stream through YouTube. It's to help all of you to get ready for the DP-600 exam. And there are a lot of topics in there. And the two previous sessions, we connected to some of those topics. This particular one, we're going to focus on that feature inside Fabric called the semantic model. So what you're going to see here today is going to help you to get prepared, but it's not the whole thing for the exam. Keep that in mind. If you have not watched the previous sessions, go back right to our YouTube channel, see the other one. So make sure that you get the whole thing so you can be really prepared for the exam. Today, we're going to focus on that particular niche, which is the semantic model, which links the data that we have in one lake inside Fabric, or the data we imported from some source, to the semantic model. And from the semantic model, they can be presented in Power BI reports. So we have there, we're going to talk about measures. We're going to talk about measures and metrics in the semantic model. We're going to see some techniques about how to organize things in the semantic model. And we're going to end the session in talking about some security topics.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So remember, we are live and interactive. So you're on the live stream at the moment. If you're watching this in the future, obviously you won't have the live chat, but you're privileged to have that. We've got our moderators, Kevin and Philippa, standing by. Drop your questions, comments in the chat, and one of our good people will get back to you. So
yeah. Never miss a chance to watch live, right? So you can interact with our moderators there. Watching later is great, but live is better.
Not too right, too right. Anyway, what have we got next, Armando? We've got our Power BI. So let's get into it. Add measures to Power BI semantic models. And what is DAX, Armando?
Oh, DAX is, well, DAX is an acronym, as you can see there on the slides, and it stands for Data Analysis Expression. And the idea of DAX here is, everybody knows that the financial language worldwide is called Excel. If you go to China and you don't speak Mandarin, but if you show an Excel spreadsheet, people will kind of grasp what you're trying to communicate, because Excel is the most common way to communicate things about numbers and calculations and all of that. And inside Excel, we have those formulas. You have that formula bar there, and you can create your calculations using the data in the spreadsheet, using functions in that formula bar. The idea of DAX came from that approach. We have data, we got a lot of data, and you want to run calculations, make calculations on top of that data. And in order to entice my Excel people into Power BI back then, now in Fabric, to have their data and their calculations done in the platform, they decide to make something that looks alike. It's sounds really, really close to it. But it's not really it, right? At the first taste, it feels like the same, but it's not the same. The point is, DAX is the language we express the calculations to Fabric in the semantic model. So we can do calculations in multiple places in Fabric, right? If you're doing data transformations, you can do data calculations and T-SQL, in PySpark, a bunch of places. But when we want to create calculations that will be presented in reports, and you want them done the right way in Fabric in order to support multiple reports, especially when they run on top of time series or run on a calendar, we want to use DAX. So if you want to work with Power BI reporting and you want to make sure the calculations that run okay, you have to learn DAX. So that's DAX. That's a library of functions and operators. We have some demos coming up here on that one. It's about formulas. It's a function-based language. And in DAX, let me switch here to an environment to show that to people. So if I come here to Fabric, for instance, let me go ahead and pick a workspace here. Let's say this one. And I should have a semantic model here, like this one here. And going once, going twice. Yeah, that is my semantic model. And as you can see, we have a few tables in there. I have the editing elements in here. And I can go ahead and start writing my DAX right here in the user interface using the browser inside Fabric. So that's one way of doing that. And
this
the
is
other way,
really great, Samando. So you can write DAX within the browser. You don't necessarily need like Power BI desktop.
Exactly, because semantic model now is also a Fabric feature. So the semantic model provides data to Power BI reports so they can do, they can present whatever report they want to do. But the semantic model belongs to Fabric. It's an item in Fabric. Like if I go back here to the workspace, I can see, let me click over here. The workspace, there we go. I can see I have an item here in Fabric called the semantic model. So regardless if I have a Power BI report or not, usually I do because they benefit from this. The semantic model belongs to Fabric if you're working Fabric, and this session is about DP-600. It's about Fabric, right? So you don't need Power BI desktop like you mentioned. But if you do have it, you can also come in here in the Power BI desktop, and yeah, you can just start creating. Let me take this message out of here. You can start typing your DAX measures. Let me see here. Oh, there we go. Right, I can use my ribbon here in Power BI desktop to create my my measures. I'm sorry, the words are escaping me. And here are the buttons, right, to create my measures. So just for this ambiguity, Marty, we do have the reference for measures and metrics, right? And it's important to make that difference, even though it's not that on the slide, because the metrics are the regular columns we have. There are numeric columns in our models, like units here, revenue here. These are columns in the tables that came from the ingestion process, right? What they were presented there in the data lake. And they just show up there. They're just numeric columns. So those are metrics.
That's interesting, Amanda. So your metrics are the columns, and if you wanted, say, to do a calculated column, you might like add two columns together, two metrics together. Would that be how you think about it?
Yeah, you see, that's a great point, because the columns we get from the data sources, they are just the data that came from the data sources. And usually, if you want to have calculated columns, like you mentioned, we ask those calculations to be done at the data source, as close as possible to the data source, right? We do have the option to come here and create a new column for a table in the semantic model, right? If I'm using here in Power BI desktop, I can do that in the semantic model, but usually we don't want to do that. So in your exam, you are following along here with us. In your exam, if you are if you have a question that's like, what's better to create a calculated column? Is it close to the source or in the table in the semantic model? The answer is always...
the penny's dropped, man. So let me get this right. Are you saying, say I'm bringing data in from SQL Server, it might be better to create that calculation in SQL Server? While I could do it in Power BI or the semantic model, it's probably better to do it in SQL Server than to do it in the semantic model.
Exactly. You nailed it. That's exactly it. And in the other hand, talking about DAX, like, going back to DAX as we were, once we have either the regular column or calculated column, we can create DAX measures that will, measures, not metrics, measures that will go through the table and make calculations, aggregations. The measures, they are always about aggregations. Like, if I come here into the units column, for instance, I do have an option here on the unit on any column, right, to come and define what I want it, how I want it to be aggregated.
So Amanda,
yeah.
So as you slice and dice your model, obviously the rows change. You get different amount of rows, but like the measure would take into account that those number of rows are changing. And so the aggregation, the max, the min, the average, whatever aggregation you want, would dynamically change. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. For the measures, that's the thing. Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice.
Pretty cool, right?
Cool. So tell us about, calculated columns and measures. We've talked about that.
We just talked about that. Yeah. So here's a summary of it. If you're following along, we can go ahead and snapshot this one here. Now, notice that the calculated columns, they do store values. That's a big thing here to emphasize, because, like I said, when you create a column and you based on a calculation, right, a new column based on a calculation, it will increase the size of your model, and will increase on the model size, on the semantic model size, which again can be done. It is supported, but not the best option. So in your exam, if you have we can choose either place, like we said before. You can add a column to the model or add a column from the source. You should always choose the option from the source, as close to the source as possible.
So the calculated columns are stored, whereas the measures are calculated at when you
on the fly every time, on the fly. And that's the beauty of the semantic model, because you can slice and dice in any direction, from any perspective, from any dimension. Back in the days before we had the semantic model, these things, when we had cubes, remember cubes? Long time ago, people were talking about cubes. Cubes, they had this thing about pre-aggregating these results, so to try to get best performance. And the semantic model in Fabric, we don't do that. We just have the formulas there. Like we have the formulas for Excel, right? We have the formulas there. And like you said, Marty, they are recalculated every time there's a refresh or a new filter is applied to the query.
So interesting. So you're talking about columns here, calculated columns, but I've also heard about calculated tables. Can you tell us about that?
Calculated tables, they are pretty much the same idea of a calculated column, to just create a new instance, right? So if I go back there in here, for instance, and I go into the model that I have here, I can see the tables that came from the Power Query, in this case, because I'm in Power BI. And I can come here if I want to. I can create a new table from here. And using DAX formulas, I can go ahead and using the DAX functions that would generate a new table for me. And like the calendar, let's see here. Calendar, there we go. Calendar.
And like the columns that are stored, they're actually stored. This table would be stored as well.
Yes, they will be calculated, generated, and the data will be stored in a model, increasing the model size. Exactly. So for an example, there wasn't a table called table before. Now there is one. I just created one here. And this one just increased the size of my model with the information that I just generated. So these are possibilities we can have if, as a data analyst, if I don't have access to the original model and I'm working with Power BI Desktop to do these things. These are options that I have. When I come here to the semantic model, where is it? Right next, right here. When I come here to the semantic model in Fabric, right? I can come and create my my measures in here. I have my tables, and I can add my measures in the tables the way I want. I have wizards to do this, the same thing there. But when it comes to, again, to calculated columns and tables, when we are in Fabric, and we're working with specifically with the semantic models in Fabric, we really want to avoid those. We don't have much support for those in Fabric.
Right. Okay. Hey, Amanda. So you've told us about calculating tables and columns. You've told us about measures. I've heard about this other thing called calculate. Apparently, it's a super duper function.
Say that again. Calculate what?
Apparently, there's a function called calculate.
Yes, perfect. Yes, there is this function called calculate, which I think comes in the next sequence of slides. And the idea of the calculated functions is the calculated function. And for those of you, again, we are here because we want to prepare for the DP-600. When it comes to DAX, one of the most important functions to master is those functions that deal with the filter context. And calculate is one of them. Like, if you want to compare the current year revenue to the previous year revenue, if someone gives you 1 year, you have to change the filter for the previous year. And the way to switch filtering context when you do a DAX calculation is by using functions like the calculate. So calculate is a very important function. We don't have time to go through all the details here, but if as I'm speaking to you, if you hear the word calculated function DAX, if you don't know what it is, jump into it. And if you know what it is, but you're not really sure about how to use it, please go ahead and take some time to study that function, because it's a very fundamental function.
It is.
In the semantic model for measure calculations.
We got a question.
You got a question.
I think it's around measures. Do you recommend creating most measures in the model layer instead of reports for governance purposes? So I've always created measures in the semantic model themselves. Can you create them anywhere else?
You can, yeah, you can create DAX calculations on the visuals, visual calculations. You can have them in there in the report. Usually, exactly like you said, usually not a good idea. I mean, it is a valid resource. It's good to use. You can use it. But if you have a calculation that should show that number on any reports, they must reside in the semantic model. So if you create a calculation for the report or for a particular visual in the report, it's fine. It's going to work. It's you're patching something. You need a calculation that was not in there, so putting that in the report. But if that's an important calculation, you should negotiate trying to get that calculation into the model.
Right, which is a good segue for the next section about scalable semantic models.
Yes, we have to keep an eye on time, right? So let's switch from DAX and
we only have an hour.
Say that again?
Unfortunately, we only have an hour. We could talk for the whole day.
Anyways, so let's talk about some techniques on how to organize our models, right? And this is about the semantic model modeling. Marty, talk to us about this approach to model the data in a way that you can have these benefits here.
Well, scalability should really be at the forefront of your mind. If you're designing an enterprise-wide solution, then you want to think about scalability. Obviously, your data is going to grow, but at the same time, you got to balance that with the flexibility. You're going to have to accommodate changes as your different requirements come in. Maybe as the business grows and changes and all that, and the data growth is going to affect both of those things. It's going to affect the scalability and the flexibility. So yeah, you've got to balance those two things, but you've just got to think about it, and you might have to make trade-offs, reduce complexity here, maybe increase it in other places. But getting the right model, you want it to be quick, you want it to give valuable information. All those things have got to be combined into that enterprise grade model. But I'm sure we'll have a look at some of those things as we move through, Amando.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's important, like you just said, it's important to emphasize that the model must have all of these attributes, and in such a way that you can use that model to support multiple reports. People coming from Power BI, right? Modern people from Power BI, they usually import data into Power BI desktop, create a report, and publish it. And if they want to do a second report, they repeat the process from the beginning. But in Fabric and with the semantic model, the idea is to have a reduced number of models, because the models there, they tend to bring this value at scale. And then you support multiple reports from that model. And it's important to try to reuse the model so we can represent the data in multiple ways in the reports.
Yeah.
Why is the scalability so important? Talk to me.
Yeah, which one is the most important? Well, it obviously depends. The thing you're not going to get away from here is the data growth. Yeah. Yep. So that's a given. Your data's going to grow. And you don't want to, if you've got to make changes, you don't want them to be, that intricate and complex. So the flexibility and reducing complexity are massively important. But yeah, I think we're going to ask some questions on the next slide about how do I design for scalability? What have I got to do? Take into consideration best practices. There's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of different viewpoints. I guess the main thing, Amando, I don't know if you'd agree with this, it's a star schema. So you've got like your fact table in the middle and your stars going off to different dimensions.
Yeah, 100% agree. I 100% agree. We actually have a couple of slides ahead that we'll talk about that.
Oh, we'll come to that later. So, So I know there's a good point here. Determine what direct lake import or direct query. So there's storage modes. And depending on what storage mode we pick, we've got different trade-offs here. For example, direct query, you might go directly to your data source, which might not be within the model itself. It might be to an external source like, say, SQL Server or somewhere like that. Whereas import, you are actually dragging the data into the engine. And you can query that very, very fast. But Amando, there's a new one out called Direct Lake. I think that came along when Fabric came along.
Exactly. Power BI people, if you've been working with Power BI for a while, import and direct query were your two options. And they're still there. There's still valid options like Martin just described to us. But, and here's an important thing, if we are using Fabric in its capacity and everything that Fabric offers to us, we are more likely using the one lake. And when we use the one lake, we have all our tables populated by ingestion processes and ETL processes, dumping data into one lake, getting the data ready for the semantic model, for the reporting. And if we are using Fabric, in this particular way, we can create a semantic model that instead of hitting the source, whatever the source, like Martin said, it's SQL Server someplace, Or instead of bringing the data into the model just for Power BI reporting, we can actually get the semantic model and connect to one lake, to the tables that are in one lake. And when we do that, we have this thing called the direct lake, which brings a lot of benefits, Marty. Like, you don't need to worry about refresh. Like, if you are using Power BI, you know you have a specific amount of refreshes per day, depending on your Power BI subscription. But if you are doing Fabric and the data is in one lake, every time someone populates, someone brings up a report, it will go straight to the source and get always the latest information on the tables. So the refresh headache disappears, goes away. How about that?
Yeah, and I think the next slide sums that up perfectly, Armando. So that the trade-offs you've got between the import, where it's like it's in Power BI, where it's direct query, where it's not in Power BI, but you're going directly to it. Direct Lake gives the best of both worlds, really. So you've got, like you say, fresh data, and you're getting it relatively quickly.
Yeah, and it's all like I said, always. I think what's most enticing about the Direct Lake, it is always working with the latest information on the table, right? That has been populated inside Fabric. It's important to understand that the table is not the original table from the source. That would be direct query, right? But when you are in Fabric, you have processes that are working in the back end, collecting the data. The data engineering people are collecting that data, bring the data into one lake, and the semantic model goes straight to one lake. Every time a calculation needs to be done, it goes straight to one lake, gets the information. If it changes, it refreshes memory and gets the new information for the end user. So that is an amazing feature in Fabric.
That's cool. Let's chat about some more best practices.
Yeah, let's move on here. The next one is the modeling best practices. I know this, you are really master at this one. Marty, talk to us about that.
Well, you know, I come from the SQL world, so I had that background when I got into this, and I did, base most of my learning on that. But it is a little bit different, like, you know, in SQL, you obviously got primary keys, foreign keys, and they're enforced. Whereas, like, you still have those in Power BI and in the models, but they are used more to locate your relationships. So the one difference I noticed about about writing DAX or writing SQL is in SQL we write a lot of joins, whereas you don't really need to write the joins in DAX. The model itself will follow those relationships through. But obviously you still need to include your necessary tables, your rows and columns. And yeah, have you got anything to add to that? I mean, there's a lot of things here. Incremental.
Yeah, I think that's the main points in there, Marty. They kind of go back to what we have seen before, right? Prepare the data upstream as much as possible. So when we get into the semantic model, the semantic model just reflects the table, and it goes like this, right? If you go here into Fabric, let's go ahead and bring Fabric here. Let's say, you know, I have.
I love this. I love it. You've always got a demo at hand straight away. Love it.
So, like, if I go here to Fabric, right, and I get this land zone here, which is in a lake house. I got a couple of tables in here. It's a very simple lake house. I was just doing some demos to a customer of mine. So I got the tables in here, and if I want to, you see, I got the button here for the semantic model. You know, just for fun, I'm gonna create a semantic model on a larger one. Let's get this guy here. Got some more tables in here, I believe. Let's take a look. Tables. Yeah, I got some more tables in here. So I can come here, like, this data is in one lake, like we just discussed, like we just mentioned. And now, in terms of modeling, bringing that data in, implementing best practice, we want to bring that into the semantic model. And we're going to choose the tables we're going to work with. Let's say I'm going to use just these three here, for instance. And those tables will come into, I have to give it a name.
DP-600. Don't forget the name. That's very important, Armando, the name. Names are important.
Yeah. So bring in the tables into the model, and in here we do exactly what you said. The data preparation is already done in the back end, and from this point on, what I need to do is just define the relationships. And the relationships, if you have the model, you know which tables are working with. You are the data analyst, so we're going to work with the relationships as you go. For some reason, the demo gods are kind of working slow today because I don't see my model here. Let's go back to the slide deck. We'll go back to the model later to see if it pops up.
I think we've got a slide in here that shows the star schemas.
Yeah, we do, yeah. Oh, there is this thing here, Marty. It's just a call out. If you go here to the workspace, where your model exists. If you come in here, you do have this settings. I mean, not the settings, or the administrative elements of the workspace. You might where is it?
I think it's in workspace settings, is it?
It's in the workspace settings, right?
Yeah, and then you can go. I think if you scroll down.
No, it's not showing here. The demo gods are not my friend today. So there is an administrative option here in the interface that pops up somewhere when you click on the right place that will let you choose if your okay, let's do this. Let's go here, new workspace, and here in the new workspace, you do have an option here, right here. See, in the semantic model. See, the demo gods, they smiled at me finally, where you can choose this one. This is an important question it's important question for the day-to-day activities, but when it comes to the exam, you may get questions that goes like, when you go for one or for the other. And this has to do with the amount of data, like you said earlier, Marty, in terms of the data footprint in memory. If you have a semantic model that's hitting tables in one lake, and the collection of data of these tables is larger than 10 gigabytes in compressed mode, which they already are because they are delta tables, you usually want to go in this one here. If they're smaller, there is a different way of managing those tables in memory, so you can go in this one here that makes life a little bit easier internally. The bottom line is, if you go large, it always works, right? If you go small and your semantic model grows too big, you may have memory issues dealing with that semantic model. Isn't that correct?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Armando. Very good. Thanks a lot for that. So there's also
the star model.
Yeah. So we got our fact table in the middle, and we've got extra information about all of the data points that might occur in our facts around. And Power BI loves this format. If you've got a model, a semantic model based on a star schema, you'll find your model to be very performance and pretty flexible.
Yes. Is that an alternative to this?
Yeah, there is an alternative. I mean, obviously, you could put everything in one massive big table. You could, not denormalize all those out into one big table. That would work. That would still be fine. However, it might not be that flexible if you've got to add things to it. You get a lot of duplicated data. Well, that's my point of view anyway. I don't know if you agree with that, Armando.
Yeah, no, 100%. I would never disagree with you. But that's 100%. Some people debate that for the exam. Keep in mind that it's considered the best practice in the semantic model to use star schema. Like Marty said, if you let's do one big, some people like to call it data frame with everything in there. When you do this, usually we don't care much about data repetition in BI modeling, but when you get one data frame, you repeat data too much, and your model, your memory footprint can be too large, and things become sluggish, right, as you move along. So follow what Marty just said. Try to stick to the star schema. There is another approach to that one, which is the Snowflake schema, not to confuse with the Snowflake product, right, the database that's out there. But there is this Snowflake schema design that it's also not a very good idea because it tends to slow down the navigation of the dimensions. So stick with the star schema, right, Marty?
Yeah, like we said, if you can make a star schema, all well and good. You're going to have little trade-offs where you might have to do a snowflake, you might have to do a bit tail. It kind of depends, but general rule, stick to a star schema if you can do it. But relationships, it's all about
what makes the star schema is as a relationship, right? So talk to us about the relationships.
Yeah, so we've seen on the star schema there before, we've got the big table in the middle and we've got our relationships going out. So when we do our queries, the Power BI engine uses those relationships to go out and know that data's maybe in a dimension or another table. And that's what they're really used for in the in Power BI. And obviously we can have different types. We can have many-to-many, one-to-one, one-to-many, same sort of relationships we have in SQL Server. But be careful on the many-to-many. Because Power BI follows those relationships, the many-to-many can often work in unexpected ways. Would that be right, Amanda?
That is correct. Yeah, in relational math, we have one-to-many, one-to-one, one-to-many, and we have the many-to-many. And it feels like if you work with if you look in the real world, like Armando likes many musics, and and a particular music is liked by many people, including Armando. So it's a many-to-many relationship everywhere around the world. We have this tendency to try to go into many-to-many. Like Martin just said, for those of you following along, right? For Martin just said, we should avoid the many-to-many because the behavior of a many-to-many has more to do with graph than actually with BI analytics. So if you want to do some graph, it's possible to have some support in there, but that slows down a lot of things inside your Power BI report, inside the semantic model, and some other places. So sticking with the one-to-many is usually the way to go. And like you said, these relationships, unlike a database where the relationships are used to guarantee data integrity, here in the semantic model, the relationships, they're used to apply filtering, right? To apply filters. Like Marty said, Power BI follows the relationship from here to here, meaning when I choose a particular color, product color, for instance, it will go from that one color and see all the sales of products of that particular color, right? So it filters out the sales table based on my selection of the dimension. So relationships in semantic model, they're more to filter than to data integrity. There's nothing about data integrity here, right, Marty?
Yeah. Filtering is the word I was looking for. So, stick to those different types of relationships. We got precedent rules, performance, things to consider, regular relationships. You've got different types of relationships. And Amanda, you threw up there a few functions we've got in DAX to look at those relationships. Don't have enough time to go through them right now, but they all will get you different ways of going through the relationship. Is that a good summary?
Exactly. For you following along, you're preparing yourself for the exam. Here is your tip on this particular slide. Go make sure you have been through the documentation, you read and you have a good grasp of the functionality, the behavior of each one of those functions. These are very important functions. Just to hit on one of them here, that's very popular one. Sometimes you have that idea of a role play. You have you have a date, and you have a product that was sold. So there was the date the product was sold. There is the date the product has been shipped, and the date that the product has been delivered. So a date can be either the order date, the shipping date, or the delivery date. And when one dimension can be used on multiple different approaches or roles, usually you will see this function here in place, user relationship. This particular one here is exactly for this type of scenarios. So if you are taking your exam and your exam is like, you have this date table and it can be either one or the other, how are you going to implement these things? You're going to do two relationships in between the tables. And when you want to use a particular one, that's not the default one, you're going to use the use relationship to define which role you want to apply filtering.
Yeah, that's a great point, Amanda. And I kind of struggled with this at first. So I thought, like, if you've got one table and it's got like two relationships going to the same table, for example, why does one have to be like switched off? And the answer is because obviously if the two were switched on and the two were active at the same time, how would the Power BI engine know which one to choose? So
you tell the Power BI engine which one to choose by using relationship.
Exactly. So and that's a great function because you can switch them around. So yeah.
So make sure you that watching live and they are watching the record later. Make sure you go through those functions and you understand what they do. So when they propose you a scenario in the exam, you know which function they are expecting you to be working with.
Right. Great stuff. Great stuff. Right. We spent a lot of time talking about relationships, but I think they're an important concept. So there's a few different types of relationships listed there on the slide, Amando.
Regular, limited, right? Precedence, rules, and performance preference.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry, you go.
No, go.
Oh no, sorry. I thought we were skipping ahead to talk about
okay, let's move on. Yeah, because these are about the performance of the relationships, and again, we don't have that much time to go into. Make sure you go into documentation, look into those.
I think you're right.
On this one here, Power BI solutions, we got the data sources, the data model, the visualizations, and the environment, right? These are things to consider when defining your model from Power BI desktop when you bring the data, like import or direct query, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Those storage models have got a lot of different impact on your models. But tuning your report is obviously paramount. Like I used to say when I was a developer, it works on my machine when I've got limited amount of data, but as soon as it goes to production and the data volumes increase, it's a different story. So you do want to tune, work with production like workloads if you can, but tuning is something to get really good at.
Yeah, perfect. Yes. Martin, tell me, how can we check if our DEX measures are working properly, if you get good performance?
Well, there's a few different tools out there. You can do it in Power BI desktop. Obviously people will probably be designing these and making these in Power BI desktop. So you've got the performance tab there. But there are third-party tools. You could look at DAX Studio, tabular editors, another tool you can use for different things. But Power BI desktop, you can do it in there. Are you about to show us, Amanda?
Yeah, I'm following your lead. Like you say, you can do it Power BI desktop. So I'm here, I'm showing it.
Yeah, nice.
So there we are. See, when you are working with your reports and someone complains about, when I click on a particular place on the report, it kind of takes forever to show the results or the number. One way you can have, like Mario was just saying, you can interact with your report and see here how all the calculations that are being done on that particular report and how long each one of those calculations took to get rendered. So the thing we're looking for is always your DEX, right? How long your DEX took to process. The visual display and other things, you usually don't have much control over those, but your DEX is what really matters, right, Marty?
I think that's a very, very good summary. There's a few things that played out. Obviously, the performance of the DAX to get the data back, performance of the rendering of the visual. There's a lot of things in play here that we need to take advantage of. But Amando, I am just looking at the time, and like you say, we've only got an hour. They need to make these things an hour and a half. What I think we should do, we haven't talked about security yet, and I think we should round off with security.
Yeah, let's jump there.
So jump to security, as we need to. It's part of the exam. Obviously, security is a massive part of developing any kind of data system. You know, you want the right people to get to the right data at the right time, and you don't want to compromise. So enforcing security in your semantic model is is paramount. And obviously there are best practices surrounding that, as there are within modeling.
Yes, definitely. And you know, you have data. Data is one of the most precious assets of any enterprise, of any company. So you got to put some security around it. In Fabric, there are multiple places where security can be pushed on. When we're looking to the semantic model, there are pretty much two things we can do in the semantic model, right, Marty? One, actually, you know, if you think about Fabric and the workspace, you do have the workspace security and the workspace level and item level security, right, Marty?
Yeah, I do. That's a great analogy. So I think of security like an onion sort of thing. You've got to let people access the workspace, but within the workspace, you want them to access tables. Within there, you want them to access view. You know, the layers are different for different approaches, but that layered approach, I think, is a good model. I think it's best practice too, Amanda.
Yes, it still is. So here on Manage Access, we can manage access to the workspace and define who can get into the workspace and see everything that's in there. To some items in there, we can go into a report, for instance, and you can define permissions at the report level about who can see this particular report, and you can share the links to that report. So that goes some security around the workspace and the elements in the workspace. But when it comes to the model, we have these options here, right, Marty?
Yeah. So you want to consider all your options. Some will be valid for one scenario, some will be valid for another. So define your rules. Now, whether you've got static rules, like Armando can see this workspace, but he can't see this workspace. Maybe you've got dynamic rules. Armando can see these rows of data, but he can't see these rows of data because Martin can only see these rows and he can't see Armando's rows. Things like, we call that row level security, and it's quite dynamic. Single sign-on, that sort of thing. Tell us more about this, Amanda.
Yeah, you just mentioned the row level security, right? And you can define row level security here on Power BI desktop and also in Fabric, in the Fabric interface. So you can come in here and use the tools here to define that. So you can define here the roles, the roles you want to manage. Like imagine in this particular case here, imagine that you have a company that works in multiple countries, and you have managers for each one of those countries, and they're supposed to see data only based on the regions they work for. So you come here and define the roles, and with the roles, you will have the rule for that particular role to be applied. Let me see, sales. Well, the rule is not showing for every reason, but the rule is there. And you define it here, right? What's the relationship between the people, the sales people in this case, with the role, and then which roles they can see, what are the criteria they can see, and what are the data actually, I'd rather say, right? They can see. And here you can test that.
Yeah, that's right. And
you can, like in first native. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry to talk over you. Obviously, I'm a long way from you geographically. But I was going to say, for people who've dealt with SQL Server before, row level security will probably be pretty much front and center of mind for them. It's effectively about filtering rows, and Martin can see row 3, but Armando can't see row 3 because we've defined in our application, our function, that they're the rules and you get to define them. That's correct, isn't it, Armando?
That's super correct. And by the way, remember that the way to identify these people is through Entra ID, right? They have to have an account in Entra ID. You cannot have any other kind of a directory service, only Entra ID.
Yeah, right. So we talked about dynamic roles. Let's talk about static. So yeah, just static things. I've got access to the workspace. Armando hasn't got access to the workspace. Things like that. Got any more examples?
Yeah, and I think that these are the three ones we have. At the workspace, we already demoed. This one here, that is the role level security at the Power BI. At the rule level, right? When we come here and we define it over here. Let's try that again. So this is supposed to be at geography, perhaps. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Got my rule right there. At geography there. So this is the static one, right? So anyone that meets the user table, and the user table defines that person as being in Canada, would be applied like that. Now, the other thing we have, Marty, and I think the next slide talks about it, is the last one we have for today, is the object level security. And in here, for our friends that are following along, here's a very important thing. You cannot do object level security through Power BI desktop or through the Fabric interface, the web interface.
Here's one thing I found out fairly recently, Armando. I think we can do that in tabular editor, but you'll have to correct me.
Say that again?
I thought you could do that in tabular editor.
You can, yes, you can do that. That's the only place you can actually do that. And as a matter of fact, if I go back here, I have brought a tabular editor here to the demo environment, so our people can see that, inside Power BI, there's an external tool that I have installed and connect to it. There is a free version of it, which the one I'm using here. And that goes to very specific scenarios. And again, when you go for the exam, they were going to give you all this collection of scenarios there. You have to grasp what they're talking about. And if they come to the scenario in your question and say, you want you to define rules, but I want you to define the rules not based on a function calculation, like the rules we have just seen that we can do in Power BI desktop, but I want you to define a rule in order to define which tables a particular person or group of person can see. So over here, I will see the table permissions, and I would say, whoever matches that particular rule I have created, they will be able to see just geography table. So this one you can read, and everything else I could come here and say you don't have access to this particular table. So this is different from row level security, where you filter rows. This is object level security when you block people from seeing a particular table. And again, there's another way of doing security in the model, and only available when you deal with the model with third-party tools like Tabular Editor, like Marty just said.
That's cool. So what I'm getting off you here, Armando, is obviously do most of your, you've got third-party tools. You should know a little bit about these third-party tools, because you can do some things in them that you can't do natively. But Armando, let's round this out. We're talking about good practice, and then we'll wrap it up, mate.
Yeah, so I think one of the important things in good practice here, and again, good practice are important for the exam, because you should follow what the Microsoft puts in the documentation, saying, no, it should go this way. And this particular bullet here, the third from the bottom, it's important one. See, use this particular DEX function when doing the filters based on user identity instead of using the username, right? So you want to use the UPN, the user principal name, the UPN, instead of using the regular username, because the username may change, the UPN will never change. So always use the user principal name.
I like the one below that, Armando. Rigorously validate your security. So your row level security, your object level security, test all your roles, obviously test other things, but we're calling specifically out security here. And I think that's a really good call out.
Yeah, the first two, they point to things we have mentioned before, like have fewer semantic models. So try to create a semantic model that can support multiple reports, so we don't have the same calculation spread out through multiple semantic models. So try to create one source that can support multiple scenarios. And when it comes to roles, all in this role level security thing we just mentioned, these are filtering. Role level security filtering like everything else, and which means it degrades performance a little bit, right, Mark?
That's right, Amando. That's right. On that note, I think we start to wrap up and let our audience know that we've really enjoyed ourselves. We wish we would have had more time, but unfortunately, we're only an hour. But get yourself along to one of those workshops that Amando talked about earlier. Let's thank our two moderators, Kevin Arnold and Philippa Burgess. They've done a great job in the chat there. And I'm happy to say bye if you are, Amando.
Yeah, it was great to be here with you. Dealing with the questions there, it's one of the most fun part of this. And thank you for having us out there. The resources we have already showed to you at the beginning of the presentation. So just go back there and check out those slides we have shown in the beginning. Don't forget to ask for your exam voucher so you can take this exam for free. Good luck. Go prepare yourself for the exam and join the club of certified data analysts in Fabric. I see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is a part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.